you some of the, pardon the pun, foul language you've ever seen.
Funny. You knew it was going to come.
I mean, it was pretty good. It wasn't really that bad. Anyway, you know what I mean. We're all here for the same reason, because this weird Canadian decided, after all these creative endeavors, landed on this one thing that you can't really put your finger on it, but it speaks to you, right? I mean, there's nothing else like Effin Birds. There are great parody accounts. There are lots of cool satire endeavors out there. But there is literally nothing like Effin Birds. And we'll talk about his history and who he is, but I feel like we should give a very warm round of applause to Aaron Reynolds. Aaron, before we dive into the brilliance that we all recognize is Effin Birds, come on, everyone knows it, all right? There wouldn't be stickers if it wasn't cool, all right? And there are stickers.
That's not true. There's stickers because I ordered them.
I'm really trying.
I'm sorry.
I'm trying to
I'm
work for
sorry.
you, man.
I'm sorry.
I'm on your side. I really am on your side. Let's talk a little bit about you growing up. You grew up in Canada, and so I know that you worked at Apple for a long time. Will you please give me your job title when you worked at Apple?
My job title at Apple was creative.
Creative what?
Creative.
Just creative.
Just creative.
Literally on your card it just said
creative.
Aaron Reynolds, creative.
I actually had, I was dealing with something through a lawyer, and the lawyer did not believe me that my job title was creative, and I had to bring him my business card with the shiny foil embossed apple on it and everything. And he says, "What does this mean?"
What does it
I was
mean?
like, well, it doesn't have to mean anything, does it? It's my job title. There's like 3,000 people with this job in this company.
And what does that mean? So what did you do at Apple?
I taught people how to talk.
Relatively creative, right?
And I would do things like, imagine you spent all this money and bought like a super expensive computer because you want to edit a movie,
right?
But now you don't know how to edit a movie. Right. I'm here for your movie editing advice,
so
or your audio editing advice, or your like photography advice.
So you were a catch-all. People could come to you for almost anything.
I did a lot
That's pretty handy.
It was a great job.
Well, how'd you end up writing books like this if you can do all that stuff?
Well, so
I mean, nothing personal. Let's not jump too far ahead.
And you know, the thing is, like, I did not expect that Effin Birds would be the thing that would be in bookstores with my name on it.
Right.
That was like not anywhere I expected I would be going. But I was off work for a bit because I was really sick and I couldn't talk. And anybody who knows me knows I talk a lot, and I like to talk, and I like people listening to me talk. And so that's also why my role at Apple was so great, because people had to listen to me talk. I couldn't talk, and I threw myself into 60s Batman because I was getting depressed. And I started like, there's a running joke in 60s Batman where everything has a label on it. And I started screenshotting all the labels, and I ended up making it into its own Twitter account called Bat Labels. And then it became absurdly popular for some reason. And then
Because it was funny.
Because it's funny, yeah. And I just kept like, having done that one time, I just kept making new things and getting them popular. And then I started thinking about, how do I make this and make it popular and make me money at the same time? Because, you know, being popular on Twitter pays nothing.
Right.
Actually, I love that Twitter's trying to work on that with like the tip jar and all that stuff. But yeah, currently being popular on Twitter gets you nothing. Other than, you know, what you can drive to somewhere else.
Right.
And so when I was looking at all the things that I had done, I started making this big list of, here's what worked, here's what didn't work, here's the things I was responsible for, here's the things that came from somewhere else, here's the reasons I can't make money with it. And then I just decided to build something that like solved all my problems ahead of time. And I came out with Effin Birds.
So before we get there, so I found Effin Birds and I fell in love, and I tried in vain to get a hold of you to have you on my radio show, to have you on my podcast for literally years. No, that's all right. I just kept looking at Eat Farts, and I'm like, that's what he thinks about everybody who loves his stuff. I'm joking. Come on. Not about me.
There's a quality filter on Twitter, and your DMs were in the back.
Yeah, no, I got you.
So
I get it. You're very popular, and I understand. But I remember, so Swear Trek is another thing that you came up with, taking these beautiful stills from the old school 60s Star Trek cartoon, 70s cartoon, and putting things on them. And, you know, I imagine even then you found pushback because you can't, I mean, DeForest Kelley, right? You can't have bones looking at the camera and saying, well, his dick fell off because a woman said words about him on the internet. Yeah, exactly. But you did. And it was brilliant. And so then when I finally got in touch with you years ago about Effin Birds, I'm like, oh my God, this is so funny. It's so amazing. Have you ever heard of Swear Track? And you just wrote back in one sentence, you're like, yeah, I am Swear Track. I was like, but it didn't surprise me because it's the same kind of, there's satire, there's humor, there's also a basic, we are taught in America to believe that most Canadians are pretty affable, pretty reasonable, pretty normal everyday people. Not the kind of people who write, sorry that being a decent fucking human being is so inconvenient for you. Or tell me more about that time you fucked off. That does not seem like a standard Canadian expression.
No, but imagine this. Imagine you're in a situation in your life where you want to say that to somebody.
All damn day, every day.
Somebody's done something horrible to you, and you are like so wound up about it.
Yeah.
What I found I could do was take my phone out, write it down in a note, put it away, and say, that's going to make me money later.
Good for you.
And then I was happy. And I was like, I've come to this new Zen-like state of like, I'm happy all the time. This is so great. And they actually noticed it at work. They started saying, you're like, nothing phases you anymore. I'm like, no, nothing. Well, I mean, I want the bad things to happen.
Yeah.
I like encourage them.
That's how I'm making money.
Somebody's going to cut me off in traffic. I celebrate that. I want that. I need that.
You have really, I mean, over the course of the evolution of Effin Birds, how many books now? Two books. But this forthcoming collection of postcards as well, right?
So there's the field guide, and then the field guide got adapted into a wall calendar and a desk planner and a daily calendar, and then I wrote Greetings from Effin Birds, which is 100 postcards, which has also been adapted into a daily calendar. Anyway, I wrote two things, but there's like 7
you've done
ways
a
to
lot of
buy
it, right? I mean, but it had to all start somewhere.
Yeah.
There had to be a day where you were like, what if I put the word fuckface next to a beautiful merganser?
So actually, here's where that came from. There is actually a real reason that happened, and it's the genesis of Swear Track.
Right.
I hate emoji. Does anybody else hate emoji? I hate emoji, right? Emoji, they're the worst. But also I needed emoji because otherwise people didn't know when I was joking. So I was like, well, what can I do instead of emoji? And I was watching 60s Star Trek, and every once in a while I would like pause it to go do something else, and there would be this shot on the screen of some enormous emotion because it's, it's stuff for small screen, right? And I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna screenshot that. And Kirk going like, is now my that's my, I don't like this, emoji. And so I started this collection of emoji that were just screenshots from Star Trek. And then one day I got the one of the episode with the Jack the Ripper in space called Wolf in the Fold.
I'll take your word for it.
Anybody know this episode? Yeah, okay. So, hello, nerd. When I say that as a nerd, there's the part at the end where they're getting rid of Jack the Ripper. They've knocked him out, and they just drag him onto the transporter platform and beam him into space. It's brutal. But anyways, it's this bald guy laying splayed out on the transporter pad, and I took a screenshot of it, and he's just like there by himself with nobody around him. And I was like, the caption for this is fuck. This guy. And then I was like, couldn't that be the caption to every one of these? And I started putting the word fuck under every one of them, and it was funny every time. And that's actually the first 2 weeks of Swear Track. Is literally every single one of them captioned with the word fuck. And after a while, I was like, I can't make this joke forever. But I made it for a while.
Man.
And then I was like, I started thinking of like more elaborate, versions of the joke. And that's how Swear Track was born.
So Swear Track was born that way, but I mean, so that makes sense. Like people, that's a cultural touchstone, right?
Yes.
Very few people own anything ever produced by the Audubon Society, right? I mean, birds, while popular and, ever present, they're not really the thing you would think of. Now, what I do love, because the pictures are so beautiful and so elegant and so simple, and so that juxtaposition is brilliant. But I mean, you could have picked 100 different things. You could have gone with effing trees. You could have gone with effing fish.
I couldn't have done trees, and I couldn't have done fish because they don't have emotions on their faces that map to human emotions. you know what I mean? Like birds they don't have the
Beady
same
little
emotions.
mean eyes.
Right. I've been told multiple times by actual bird experts that you should not ascribe human emotions to birds or human motivations to birds because it's not realistic or real. And just because he looks like he's got a little frowny face doesn't mean he's upset. It's just his face. But the thing is, when we look at them, we see those emotions, right? And so that's why birds work for me.
Okay.
Like, look at this owl right there. When I looked at that, I was like, oh my God, when did I get so fucking old?
Exactly.
Like, that's what I saw in that bird's eyes.
Way too damn real.
Exactly, right?
Way too damn real.
And so birds were like,
Yeah.
so birds were important in two ways. One, that the emotions worked, like they mapped to them, and two, CBS wasn't going to sue me for like.
Understood.
Yeah,
So early on, you've got all these sort of royalty-free images of birds.
Yeah.
But I mean, was there one moment where you're like, birds, that's it?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
really?
It was. So I had originally pitched this to a big media organization who asked me for pitches for their brand, for their comedy brand that was failing on Twitter. They were really good at like their old school stuff that they did. They have a great legacy of television comedy and stuff like that. But Twitter, they were just dying. And so they asked me for pitches. I gave them a bunch of pitches, and I gave them something that was essentially Effin Birds because they liked swear drink.
Yeah.
And I gave them something that was essentially Effin Birds, but about their brand and about like iconography related to their brand. They hated it. They super hated it.
Right.
And I came out of that meeting like, first I was like, wow, I blew that. My ideas are bad. And then I was like, no, these guys suck. They suck at this. That's why they're calling me. And so I was like, okay, so what do I do to make a version of this that doesn't have their brand in it so I can show them that it works? And then I got a spam email that offered me 6 gigabytes of bird stock art for $20.
But literally, so we talked about this on the podcast yesterday. Like literally happenstance, and like I suddenly have this impossible library of bird images to fit my dark,
all
twisted
of this
Canadian
stuff.
vision.
And you know the does anybody got the fuck off with that shit owl on their shirt or anything like that? Do you know the one? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was the icon in the ad, and I was like, this owl is the owl. You know, he's not in there. He's in the other.
No, I'm just looking through these because I never get tired of looking at them.
Aww.
Well, it's actually quite true.
Aw, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So when is the, and then I want to turn it over to people because I'm sure they have a zillion questions for you. But so before we get to you traveling the world, bringing this to people, publishing
That's
internationally,
weird shit.
wildly celebrated. Before we get there, though, there had to be. I mean, I know that there's a lot of slow growth and a lot of work in there as well, but there had to be a moment where you're like, holy shit, I'm onto something. Like, there had to be one post or one thing you did where suddenly the reaction wasn't like, oh, 50 people like this. It was like 40,000 people like it, or 300,000
The first time it happened, it was because Will Wheaton retweeted something, and he had 4 million Twitter
Wesley.
followers. Yeah, right? Love that, man. He's literally responsible for me having a book deal.
For real?
So, yeah, from retweeting me.
Well,
I
that's
think
cool,
that is
whatever
the
it takes.
power of. So you know what happened though? He retweeted that one, and I saw that he was following me, and then I cyberstalked him.
course
And
you
what I
did.
did was I
Of course you did.
this is not in a well, I guess in a bad way. I had a really good look at when he posted, so when he was active, and I had a really good look at what he liked best, which tweets he had liked, which ones he had retweeted, and then I just made sure that I gave him exactly the kinds that he liked, exactly when he was around. And it worked. It worked like
Stepping stone.
2 out of 10 times, something like that. He would
That's all it takes.
he would retweet it. And it was like, that was a growth strategy. And it felt slightly dirty.
But not really, because that guy's discerning, and that guy's very talented, and he's very thoughtful.
Yeah.
And every single person in this room has seen some of your work, and they're like, that's fucking brilliant.
Yes,
Sadly,
I
not
retweeted
all
it
of
or
us, even
whatever.
combined, are Will Wheaton levels of
No.
being able to promote you.
Yeah,
So-
but so the thing is, like, I justified it to myself because first I felt super dirty doing it, and then I was like, no, I'm giving him the content he loves, and I'm giving it to him at the time that he's here. So great, it's a good thing. I'm doing a good thing, not a bad thing.
Diabolical. Unbelievable.
I'm a monster.
Well, no, that's not true. Actually, I've spent enough time with you in the last 48 hours to know that's not true. You are, despite your impossible use of coarse language, you are actually a very kind and decent and thoughtful individual.
Thank you.
It's come to my attention that you're a huge fucking dickweed.
Yeah.
Who runs that? So, you're going to be at Con all weekend.
I'm
right?
at Twin Cities Con all weekend.
All right, and so people can come up, they can talk, they can buy here tonight as well.
Yes.
Is there anybody here who has a question?
I want to say one thing
Oh, go ahead.
about that. This book, to get it here tonight and to get copies for the con, my U.S. publicist moved heaven and earth. Their office is literally in this city, and they got these into their office yesterday.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, right?
And they're
there
not
are-
out officially till the end of the month,
They're
right?
not out until October 22nd.
Right.
And unless you ordered it from the UK.
Okay.
Came out in the UK.
Got
in
it
September.
imported.
Yeah, exactly. That's more about
The
publisher
important
is.
things in life.
Exactly, right.
Very exciting.
And related to that, there are 9 copies of the Page a Day calendar. That was how many we could get. So apparently Amazon wants all of the Page a Day calendar business.
Yeah.
So they bought them all.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, that's not fair. I want to sell them to people.
Well.
I don't want people to not have to buy them on Amazon. I want to sell them in bookstores. Anyway, so there's 9.
Tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I think I got this story right when you told it to me yesterday. You had to get a UK book deal
Yes.
to get a USA book deal to get a Canadian book.
My Canadian book deal is a throw-in on my USA book deal. Literally a no advance throw-in. And it's not as good as my France book deal.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things about Canada is that we don't like our own until they've been famous somewhere else. Yeah. You have to go, so does anybody know the show Murdoch Mysteries?
Yes.
Okay, Murdoch Mysteries rules, right?
Yeah.
Mrs. Murdoch
Mm-hmm.
and what's her name? The nurse with the red hair. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Anyways, Mrs. Murdoch is also a bartender in Toronto, and the nurse with the red hair is a personal trainer. They're on the top-rated show in the country in major roles, but also they need another job. So the only person who gets paid a full-time wage on that is the lead, because he went to the States and did some B action movies in the 90s. So he's a known quantity. So yeah, I couldn't get a Canadian publisher to talk to me. So I got a UK publisher, and then I got a US publisher who was very enthusiastic.
Yeah.
And then they were like, oh yeah, and also we'll take the Canadian rights.
Well, so you talk about a French publisher. Is this translated into other languages?
Yeah, I have a French copy. A French postcard book is actually how this postcard book came to be. Because when we sold it to France, we sold the field guide to France.
Yeah.
And the publisher spent a lot of time working on it because translated comedy is not like a slam dunk. That's very much.
Well, that's what I was
like
going to say. How do you know it's as funny in French?
That's right. And my French is weird, shitty Canadian French, so I can't even I sort of
Don't
understand.
let anybody from Quebec hear you say that. Christ,
No,
man.
people
Wow.
from Quebec will tell you that I speak what's called Toronto High School French. It's a dialect of its own. It's garbage. I speak garbage French. They asked me, they were like, can you do some publicity for us? I was like, if you want it in Toronto High School French, sure. But I think people are going to be mad.
They're like, we've got something. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you ever heard somebody who with a really thick Scots accent, that's
Oh,
what
yeah.
I sound like a French people.
I understand.
Yeah.
All right.
Where was I going with this story? Okay, France.
Yeah.
So the company that licensed it, Le Pen, are known for rude postcard books. And they came back after about 6 months and they said, hey, we know that we can sell postcard books because we sell all these postcard books. Do you mind if we adapt this into a postcard book? And I was like, yes, and we're going to make one in English. And so we did.
Wow. So they came up with basically the concept.
Yeah, my French publisher.
But have you had someone whose French you trust translate it and let you know that
Le Pen is known for their imagine best wishes, but most awful wishes is
Right.
essentially how it translates. That's their line of postcard books,
I
and they're funny and people like them. So
I want to hear someone very continental and very French translate. Thanks for showing the rest of us what a trash fucker you are.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I mean,
I read enough regular French
Yeah.
that I understood what the translation was, and I was super happy with it. Although there was this one guy who texted me on the Effin Birds text message service.
Uh-huh.
He texted me, I think you're using the wrong version of the word of to fart. You're using the word that is the noun and not the verb.
you're not conjugating it right. You're doing plural
Right.
instead of right.
And then he said, and it was a he, and then he said, of course I'm not a native French speaker. What the fuck? It's there's literally I have a translator whose job is to translate, who's also funny. So eat my farts.
Right.
But actually, when I was like, translator, tell me how to shut this guy down. And he says, oh, well, so he says, what he is writing is, you should eat my farts. And what I'm writing is, you should eat the smell of my farts. And I
Wow.
was like, wow, that's way better. Okay, high five translator.
Yeah. Very esoteric. I like that very much.
Right? So, but it's just like, it's like literally one letter different in the
Yeah.
two forms of it, and one of them is casually used to mean the smell of farts rather than the act of farting. Anyways, French, it's a language.
It's
so
weird. Eat the smell of farts as opposed to actually eating farts.
eat the smell of my farts. I was like,
Oh.
yeah, wow, I maybe want to make an English version of that.
It's such a romantic language.
It's like,
isn't it? No, I get it.
It's like that Google Translate joke where you put the spirit is willing but the flesh is weak, and you translate it into Russian and back, and you get the wine is good but the meat is bad. So
That's a fun trick translating to Russian, you say.
yeah, into Russian.
Huh.
I almost had a Chinese book deal. It came so close, and then the Chinese publisher got afraid.
Really? Just like it was too hostile, or what
Yeah,
happened?
they were like, I don't know. I think we're going to get on a list if we publish this book.
You're probably already on a list.
I'm on lists.
I mean, like, so how did that even come about? How do the Chinese begin, or a Chinese publisher? How do they express?
How do
interest?
they? So I have my UK publisher has a rights agent that is like always super active, trying to get like deals. We'd be trying. Does anybody know anybody in Australia who runs a publishing company? Because it's the only English language like territory where I don't have a book deal is Australia.
I feel like this would be
Australia.
wildly. I've been to Australia a couple times.
Right?
I feel like this is how they talk on the daily.
Right?
Yes.
There's an Australian book chain called Dymox that import this book by the butt ton. And so it's like they know it can sell, but no publisher wants it. Whatever.
Huh.
I know, right?
Well, seriously, I mean, I have a million more questions, but I'm going to stop talking
Yeah,
for a little while
he's got
because all I ever do is talk. Does anybody have a question for Erin?
It's kind of a two-part question,
Oh.
but you talked a little. I know, hate those, right? You talked a little bit about the artwork.
Yeah.
And you said, so is it royalty free?
So it depends on what era of Effin Birds, because I sort of like go through mutations. I started with this one collection that I licensed, and then I got contacted by the Audubon Society, and yeah, right? I saw that reaction. They contacted me. First they contacted me and I did an interview in the Audubon magazine about Effin Birds, which was hilarious. Somebody threatened to cancel his Audubon membership. I was like, you know what the best part of that is? Audubon won't even notice that he's gone, so he's just depriving himself of something he loves out
Right.
of spite. I was like, I feel so bad for his family. Anyways, so his poor wife. A nice lady named Carrie from the Audubon Society said, have you ever considered using John James Audubon's art? I will give you all the print files for our high resolution restored versions of it. And I said, you guys would want that? and she says, well, technically it's in the public domain, so you don't have to ask us or get our approval, but we're also trying to make sure that his work stays in the public eye. And I was like, sweet, let's do this.
Even next to the F-bomb.
Even next to the F-bomb.
That blows my mind, that
Yeah.
part of your story. The Audubon Society, man, think about how austere and how,
Oh, yeah.
proper and recognized
Yep.
it is.
I did their
The fact they're
Christmas
like,
card. I did their
feel
20
free.
bucks for their membership. It said it was not as sweary as most of them.
Yeah.
But it's a cedar waxwing on a branch, and it says fa la 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 blah blah blah. So that was my Audubon Society Christmas card.
But the fact that they were on board,
They're on
that
board
actually
with it.
warmed my heart.
Right?
I mean,
Yeah.
you would not think they would be on board with this atrocity.
So here's the thing. I do a lot of stuff with the work of Thomas Buick. Most of the black and white stuff is this English engraver named Thomas Buick, who I love his work. And he wrote a 2-volume book called The History of British Birds, and it's worth reading because he's so grumpy. And he hates modern life of like 1801. God, does he hate living in modern times? And he hates young people. And, it's so great. Right, yeah, so like, who would think you're reading this book about, here's every bird in Britain, also I hate young people. So, anyway, so it's like, his work though, like really resonated with me and really worked with the whole concept of it. And I was like, okay, so yes, all in the public domain, and I've sourced my own vintage copies of History of British Birds, and I have like 6 copies of it now in my house. Do you guys have any copies of History of British Birds here?
I can find out.
Yeah, sweet. I'm gonna go home with more.
Did you really send someone to the reference section?
I really
Is that
did
what you
that.
just
I really
did?
just did that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right.
So, anyways, I was like, you know what? There is a Buick Society. They are responsible for maintaining Buick's childhood home as a museum, right? And so I was like, oh, you know what I should do? I should give them money. And so I joined the Buick Society. They hate me.
Shocking.
But they really like my money. And so we've come to an arrangement. It's great. It's great. They send me the newsletter. They pretend I don't exist.
Yeah.
It's great. I give them donations.
Please
all the
quit
time.
doing this. Keep sending your money.
Well, they can't say, please quit doing this because
Public domain.
public domain. But they can just pretend I'm not there.
You're crazy as a fox. What was the second part of your
So the
question?
second one is, you talk a little about how you took your phone out and you would write or type things out. How do you match up your birds to what you're saying?
Right. So I have 2 different days when I'm doing Effin Birds. I do artwork prep day and I do writing jokes day. And so artwork prep day, I'm just really cleaning up the art, making sure that it has like the right kind of emotions. And sometimes I'm going in there and screwing with them a little bit just to make this guy's eyes just the right amount of wide and like crazy. So I do that, and then on writing day, I will open them and stare into their eyes and wait for them to say something to me. And if they don't, I'll open my note and start rolling through it. And something in that note will either, trigger something for me, or I'll say, oh, I remember this parrot from 3 days ago. Let's go grab him and put him in here. And so it kind of like, it's like a bit of mix and match and a little bit of like, oh, what happens in the moment? Yes.
Yeah, I have 2 parts too.
Oh my God.
The first part is to say, you know me from Twitter.
Yep.
I'm a nice person. I'm a very nice person.
But your nickname on Twitter is Ass Lady. I'm sorry that I outed you there.
It's a long story, and it's okay, and it's your fault. So.
I don't even remember doing it.
Wow.
It's because when you're on your Twitch.
Oh,
feed,
when I was
writing
when I was
your
signing
things.
2,000 book plates, and I
It's
started
sort of
looking,
your
I was
fault.
writing
Sandra's fault.
ass instead of my
Yeah,
name.
because she came online and she went, oh, the ass lady's here.
Nice.
And it's in the book.
I didn't know the ass lady was going to be
The ass
here.
lady's here. Yeah.
But during the political stuff,
Yeah.
elections, I'm an elections worker in Wisconsin, and I'm very involved. I couldn't have survived if I wouldn't have had Effin Birds. Those are the only times I really send them to people. I had so much fun sending them to every political person that crossed my Twitter feed. So know that.
Thank you.
That was my favorite part. The other thing I always think about every time one of your new things comes out, I think, what does your mother-in-law say now?
Well, she's still not into it. Think about this. So the dedication of the first book says, to my mother-in-law who does not believe this is an acceptable way to make a living. And that was a real thing she said to me because her son-in-law quit a comfortable, well-paying job of over a decade at the biggest, most stable company in the entire world
Maybe you've heard of Apple.
to write bird cartoons. So I mean, I get it. Like that's
You and I were having dinner earlier today, and I asked you, I'm like, I'm not trying to delve into what this is like, but this is also a 2-parter. You're
Oh.
welcome. I love it when anybody, like we all know people who do artistic endeavors, right? We all know musicians, we know painters, we know whatever. Almost none of them get to make a livable wage
Yep.
doing what they do for a living. So I celebrate this. You got to quit your fucking, even if you were creative at Apple, you got to quit your job and do something that gives you outright joy.
I didn't so much get to quit as was told that if I didn't back out of my book deal, they would fire me. I was like,
Well,
fuck
then,
you, bye.
Bye for you, too, right? I mean,
Exactly.
that's what we do. So
Yeah.
I applaud the fact, and I love the fact that you're able to do this. But you're not only just making a living, you're doing well for
I'm
yourself.
doing fine.
And
It's
your
weird.
and your mother-in-law still is like
She's like,
you with
I
your
don't know.
foul-mouthed bird
You
cartoons.
should go get a stable
Oh,
job.
Christ.
You could probably manage the Walmart. And it's like, here's the thing. I could.
Yeah.
And it would probably yield all this extra material.
Yeah.
You know what I don't have? Time. I don't have time to do that.
So you bring up when we talk about you sourcing out all these pictures and where
Yeah.
it all comes from,
Yeah.
and the fact that it's all been sort of royalty free. That's not terrible. That's a pretty good
That's pretty
thing.
good, yeah.
But you also have gotten to the point where not only do you alter them, like some of the pictures, you just do the whole damn picture, right?
Nah, not that many of them.
Oh.
A few.
I've been
Like,
led astray.
I'm-
I was led to believe.
There's a swear track that says I suck at art. It's
Yeah.
this person who's it's Captain Kirk, and he's signing one of the things on the pad, but he's like, and then he looks up into the sky, and I just made him say, I suck at art, and I really do feel like that about myself, and I know that I don't.
Right.
I did actually spend a lot of time, like as a cartoonist through high school and after that, but like I don't love my own art. I just sort of go and do some other people's stuff. You know what I mean? Like I just sort of like.
I get it.
I want to be somebody else. I don't want to be me. Yeah, for art.
You were going to be a photographer by trade. You went to school for being a
Yes,
photographer.
I was a photographer.
Have you ever thought about doing actual photos of birds, or are you in love with these sort of engravings and lithographs?
The engravings are funnier.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, and that actually is what killed the coloring book. We were going to do a coloring book, and every time we did the artwork and adapted it to like coloring book style, it wasn't as funny anymore. It somehow got less funny as soon as it was cartoony, and so it was like, yeah, that's. And my editor was like, "I think we have to kill this. I'm so sorry." And I'm like, "No, you're right. Like, it's not as funny like this." So
Well,
like,
it's not worth it if it's not great.
If it's
right?
not great, let's not do it because we're not going to sell. You know, I can sell the number of copies that I can sell to people directly on the internet, but I won't sell lots of copies in a bookstore if it's not good. You know. Yes.
So,
Is it a two-part question?
no.
Can you make it a two-part question?
Think of another one while you're asking.
It's
that.
Alvin.
Yeah.
It's actually just a comment. I wanted to say thank you. So Hannah and I are both infectious disease epidemiologists at a health department.
That sounds terrifying, right?
Yeah. And Hannah is actually the one who told me about Effin Birds, and some days that was the only thing that would like get us through the day is that we would like share it with each other and have a moment of levity and laughing. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. I think one of my favorite things that happened from Effin Birds was I got sent a series of screenshots between two members of parliament for different parties that they were both sending each other Effin Birds to rag on each other. And I was like, first of all, this is so awesome. And then one of them said, "Do you want to come visit Parliament? Do you want a tour of Parliament? Like, do you want to be invited to Parliament?" I was like, "Fuck yeah, I want to be invited." So I went, and I was still working for Apple because where I was working in Ottawa, and so it was like literally 10 minutes to Parliament from where I was working.
Is this national or provincial?
This
Parliament?
is national. This is
Wow.
Canada's
Parliament.
The
Okay,
Parliament.
all right.
And so I was like, "Hey guys, I got invited to Parliament." And they're like, "You mean you're going on like the tour?" I was like, "No, I got invited as like a prominent Canadian to Parliament." And they're like, "I don't know if we can give you the time off." And I was like, "I literally got invited as a prominent Canadian to Parliament. I'm going." That was kind of the beginning of the end, I think. But the best part was that I didn't bring any ID because I'm a moron. And I'm trying to get in, and they're like, "Do you have any ID?" And I was like, "Oh, shit." And I start going through my pockets, and I'm pulling stuff out, and I start giving the guy this thing, and I was like, "Oh, no, not that." And he's like, "Wait, sir. Show me that." And I was like, "It's not ID." He's like, "Hand it over." And so I handed it over, and what it was, anybody know the artist Hallie Bateman? She's funny as hell. I love her. Look up Hallie Bateman. You know Hallie Bateman?
You just posted about her, didn't
I
you?
did.
Yeah.
The one that says
The
it's
I
a
don't know
miracle
when
we
I-
ever met.
how we ever met,
that's-
yeah.
Yeah. So the first thing I ever saw by her was an option to buy a thing called an artistic license, and it looked like a driver's license, but she would draw you. And then it would say artistic license, and on the back it would say, "This is a license that grants you the right to make art. It does not guarantee that the art will be good or make sense." And I was like, "Ah, I love this." And so I immediately bought one, and that's what I handed the guy in Parliament. And I was like, "I'm
In
sorry."
Parliament.
In Parliament. And this is the Mounties that are guarding
Yeah,
Parliament,
no, I'm
right?
sure.
So, and I was like, "I'm sorry." And he's like, "Sir, there's no reason someone would have this if they weren't actually the person on it." I was like, "This is true." He's like, and then he's handing it back to me, and he says, "It's a really good likeness." I was like, anyways, that's how I got into Canadian Parliament with a duel with myself.
They let you in.
Shh, I probably shouldn't tell
Only
that
in
story.
Canada, man. Wow.
No. Okay, so the requirements to get into the United States, I sign an attestation that I do not have COVID. I get a negative test, and all this other. I had so much paperwork to get into the United States.
Yeah.
Nobody looked. They literally just let me get on the plane. They
Well,
did search my luggage,
I'll bet.
but they didn't ask me about
Is weed legal up in Canada now?
everywhere.
Everywhere.
So
The
actually,
whole country.
legalization, the first week of legalization was great because you turn into CBC News World, which is our big national news broadcaster, and they'd be like, "We're tracking the price of pot across the country." Turns out you can still score the cheapest weed in Quebec. It's nothing changed.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead.
yeah.
So you've been talking about birds, obviously.
Yeah.
But before you started this, did you know a lot about birds in terms
Nothing.
of like because you mentioned I find like a cedar something wing
Yeah.
in one of these, and so
I
your
know
knowledge
some of them now because
Yeah.
people get so mad at me when I don't know what the birds are. Did anybody see the saga of Bird Bro? Do you know that story? There was this man who was so angry in my replies, and I just was trying to figure out why he was mad. It's like, what's the matter? Like, what are you trying to say here? And he's like, do you even know the names of these birds? And I felt like saying, fuck you, that's a Baltimore Oriole. Baltimore Oriole is
I remember there was a lady in one of your reviews who said,
ginger.
"This is so." I could just see her old. Sorry, there's. Oh my God, I'm gonna offend somebody. But anyway, that's the whole point of being here, right?
Yeah.
So she goes, "This is the most offensive book, and there's nothing explaining the detail of these birds and
Right.
And I'm just like, what the fuck is your problem?
What were your expectations? What did you expect from this?
That's not the funny part.
Yeah.
Right?
She's
Forest
like-
for the trees, right?
She's like, there are a lot of beautiful books about birds, and this is not one. Wait, is she back? There are beautiful books out there about birds, but this is not one of them. Also, my favorite Goodreads review ever, it is painfully clear that the author has no knowledge of or interest in actual birds. And then, the one and only Rick, who there was a argument between two different bookstores, a very funny faux Twitter beef between two bookstores about where to file Effin Birds. And one of them posted a picture of it in the bird field guide
Right.
section. And Rick writes, well, he wrote something about how like you can't even send a child to browse the bird books anymore without them coming across this vulgar and pointless book. It's a form of pollution. And so, vulgar and pointless, a form of pollution.
Available, by the way, when we're done here. So,
Yeah!
Speaking of the vulgar and pointless pollution that you have
That is my book. Yeah.
shamelessly profited from,
Yep.
even the most creative, even the most swear-oriented individual, there have got to be days where you're like, I can't come up with another word for dick bucket or fuck trowel or whatever
Yeah.
it is that you like to say. I mean,
Yeah.
what do you do to go out and sort of rejuvenate the swear generator?
So two things. One is I go on a walk.
Okay.
Whenever I have trouble writing anything, I go on a walk.
Okay.
And it works somehow. As long as I'm not like, no podcast, no music,
Right.
nothing like that. I just go on a
the
walk
brain.
with nothing but my stupid brain and let it just spin while I'm concentrating on not falling. You know, and so because I'm bad at walking. Anyways, but that usually works for me. But otherwise, I learned to treat it like a job. Who has had a job that they didn't feel like doing or going to? Who went to work anyways? Who faked it and did a good job? Who feels like their boss had no idea they didn't want to work that day? Yeah, I've done that when writing this comic. Because you know what? You can do it. Sometimes when you don't feel like doing something, you can just go ahead and do it. It's just like anything else, you know.
Right.
And it turns out I can do that. And it turns out that I don't remember doing those ones. And then later I see them and I was like, those are good. When did I write that? There's actually a notorious note between me and my editor from the first book that I've circled it and I wrote, who wrote this joke? And she replied, it's in your first draft. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Do you have a drawer or a booklet or a thing of many, many, many as yet unused jokes?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually have, so do you guys know about all the problems with like printing and stuff worldwide right now? It's chaos. Yeah, right? Hey.
Supply
So-
chain.
It's
right?
bad.
Supply chain stuff. So, Andrews McNeil, who do my calendars, they rule. They were having so much trouble getting the day-to-day calendar to market, even though we finished it 5 months ago, right? And no, more like 4 months ago. But that's enough time, you know? But no, it has not been enough time. And so they came to me and they said, Aaron, we have a production slot in November that we can use to do the 2023 page-a-day calendar.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, whew, what does that mean? And they said, well, can you give us all 315 jokes for next year by October 1st
Of this year.
of this year?
That's already come and gone.
So today,
That's
today.
today.
That's today.
Wow.
Yeah.
How'd that go?
And I was like, oh, shit. And they're like,
Do they have to all be freshies, like nothing you've ever
all
done
brand
before?
new. All brand new.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, not all brand new, but nothing that has been in a book before. Does that
Understood.
make sense? Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah. So I had at that point about 120 cartoons. So it wasn't that I had to write 315. It was that I had to write 200. Right?
It's still
That's
a
still a
lot.
lot. That's
Yeah,
a lot.
a lot.
And they had like, it was like a 3-week deadline. And I was like, holy, that sounds like a lot of work. They're like, well, double your advance. And you know what? I did it. So here's the thing. Effin Birds is actually written until May. If I do not write another joke until May, there will still be a cartoon every day that's brand new. And that's terrifying to me. And it also means that I suddenly have this space that I've been seeking to finish other projects. Because the thing about having a book that sells a bunch of copies is that then your publisher is like, oh, so what else have you got? And it's not like, they're not saying, give us more Effin Birds. They're like, what other book do you have in your pocket?
Well, not to be your publisher, but what other books do you have? in your pocket?
So I was working on for a long time a very stupid idea that turned into a good idea. It's called Space Werewolf. It is, right?
Of course it is.
Do you want to know the tagline?
Yes.
It's always full moon. On the moon. So imagine,
Pretty good, Eric.
imagine
Pretty good.
a Russian moon mission that ends in disaster and is covered up.
Don't sell
Because
it to me. Sell it to
the
these people.
Russians got to the moon first, but it turns out one of the crewmen was a werewolf, and he did not realize that going to the moon would short circuit the moon cycle.
You're always a werewolf.
You're always a werewolf on the moon. You're actually end up kind of being a half werewolf that keeps having moments of lucidity. It's really great.
Basically, it's the Effin Birds of Twilight.
Kind of, yeah. But it's a comic book, like a straight old-fashioned floppy comic book. I actually got Sandy Gerald, who's one of my comic book heroes, to do a cover for it so that we could pitch it. And I love it. It's a torn-up Russian cosmonaut suit with a cracked visor, where you see half a wolf face inside of it with the moon reflected in the other half. It's like, oh. And then we did a couple of key pieces of art. One of my favorites is the wolf with the torn-up cosmonaut suit on its knees, howling at the earth. But anyways,
Very ironic.
it's like super action oriented.
Yeah, yeah.
Werewolves on the moon. Lots of weird stuff like everything getting set on fire.
So it's brilliant and it's interesting.
Yeah.
I love it, and there's obvious humor in there, and there's some cool stuff.
Yes.
But when your publisher is like, "This is great, really great. Everyone loves Effin Birds. You're doing a great job, Aaron. What's up with this Russian werewolf thing?"
Well, so
I
here's
mean,
the great
are they
thing.
into it or not
They're
really into it?
super into it because every publisher wants to do graphic novels.
Oh, I suppose.
And so
Well, 'cause
my
that Netflix series, right?
Yeah.
And
well, that's like, and I'm
adaptation.
like, do I want to sell it to somebody who would take 50% of the money if we
Yes.
sold it to the movies?
Yeah.
Or do I want to self-publish it and take 100% of the money if we sell it to the movies? But then I'm like, but will I sell it to the movies if I self-publish it because no one will see it? Anyways, that's all stuff like that. That's all stuff for the future. I'm going to write it first.
So how'd you come up with, okay, two-part question.
Yes! Now I like them.
So first, because they're both related,
Yeah.
how did you decide / come up with the text message
Oh, yeah.
chain that
Yeah.
I'm guessing everyone here is
Everybody here on the text
number
messages?
one.
Yeah.
And then number two, the Happy Sacrilegious Sunday,
Yeah, Sacrilege Sunday.
How'd that get into the mix?
So Sacrilege Sunday is because I spent a lot of time in Ottawa on the Quebec border, and in Quebec swearing is different. They speak French, but French swearing in Quebec is not bodily functions and body parts. That's France,
Say that again. Swearing in French is not what?
not bodily functions and body parts. It is in France,
Okay.
like shit And
Oh,
you know,
gotcha.
like
Yeah.
that's swearing in France. There's merde, you know.
Okay.
But in Quebec, where the Catholic Church was incredibly powerful right up into the 1960s, the way you express like ultimate anger in the most foul way possible is you string together nouns related to the Catholic Church. It's the best swearing ever, because the more you use, the more powerful it is, and the only way you know it's swearing is you spell it wrong. So you spell it phonetically instead of tabernacle, you say it the same, it's tabernacle, but it's TABARNAK, you know, instead of QU. So like it's Hostie, which is like the holy host. It's like Hostie de Vierge de Tabernacle de Calice de yeah. So it's like you just keep saying that.
You can't
and-
talk like that in here.
Yeah, I know. People's grandparents will punch you.
Oh, I'm sure.
It
sure.
is so foul. It's considered so
Yeah.
rude. And like TV in Quebec, they say shit and fuck. Who cares? But you cannot say hostie.
Weird.
Yeah, it's awesome. So anyways, Sacrilege Sunday comes from, on Canada Day, I would do Quebec French swearing, and people would be like, what the fuck is this? And then some people would be like, I put this into Google Translate and it says Jesus crackers. And I'd be like, well, technically that's correct.
Yeah.
That's actually why there's an English Effin Birds that says Jesus crackers. Google Translate does not understand Quebec French at
Well, it's almost like Cockney rhyming slang,
It
right?
is.
Where,
It's-
I mean, like,
so there
you
is
have to
actually,
be from this area to have any vague idea
Yes.
that how wildly offensive it is.
but also, hell has heck, right?
You know?
So Quebec cursing has sound-alikes that are normal words. So what I learned
Like
at
Cockney
Little,
rhyming slang.
yeah. So I'm at Little League baseball games where my kids are playing, and the parents of the team from Gatineau, which is just over the border, which are like bateau, and I'm like, he just said boat. He just said boat, but like he's mad. And so I was like, as an Anglophone, I gotta know.
What the hell?
Bateau? He's like, well, it's when you don't want to say baptême, which is baptism. You don't want to say baptême, so you say bateau. I was like, that rules. So there's actually a super common like slang swear, which is 5 or 6 boxes of ripe tomatoes, because it rhymes with a really long set of. Oh, it's so good. So, anyways, that's where Sacrilege Sunday comes from. What was the other question?
About your
How did
text.
you
Text messages.
How did you
Oh.
decide to create that, or how did the creation
So
of that come to?
it was a solution to a problem. During the American election, I repeatedly got my Facebook account locked for being electoral interference, because I'm a dirty foreigner
Yeah, you are.
who has a lot of reach in the United States, who posts images. Guess what? It looks exactly like election misinformation, except for the part with its birds. But anyways, the algorithm can't tell the difference between them. And I repeatedly was gone from Facebook for weeks at a time. I was having my reach drop like a stone on Instagram. And on Twitter, I had to verify my identity more than a dozen times. I submitted my identity documents so many times, and what I realized was when they're asking me to verify my identity, they're asking me verify that you're American, and I'm not. And so every time they got this Canadian passport, they're like, no, verify that you gotta verify your identity. And so I was like, well, what is a place where I won't have that problem? What is a place where I have more control? I can say a website, but like, nobody's gonna visit a website. It doesn't come to them, you know? The thing about Effin Birds is it comes to you when you need it, right? And so I started looking at text messaging platforms, and I found Community, which is good because it works in Canada and the United States, and they have agreements with all of the carriers so it doesn't get blocked as spam. So please don't complain to your carrier about the Effin Birds text messages, because I'll lose the whole thing. But yeah, but there's like 10,000 people on it, which is great. I can accidentally send 10,000 people a picture of my soup, which I did one time. I was trying to send a picture of a bird, and I pressed the wrong button. I was like, oh, did I just send that? That's literally what's on the table in front of me. So, that was right near the beginning, It's like this running joke now. Hey,
How did it feel to capitulate the entire election as a foreign interloper?
I just, fuck.
Well done. Well
Yeah,
done.
I did
Good
it. It
question.
was all me. Yeah.
So kind of jumping off of the texting, how, like, and this is, sorry, this is my tangent, how do you make money off that? Because doesn't it cost money to?
It does. It costs a lot of money. So about once a month.
Because you do it every day, and that's,
I do
like,
it
I
every
will
day.
admit that honestly, like, right now, my job is hell. So, I love
I'm
my job
here
most
for
of the
you.
time.
I'm
I
here
love
for
my job
you.
most of
Yeah.
the time, but right
Yeah.
now it is hell.
Yeah.
It's actually gonna get better today. Like, September
Good.
was better.
I quit, so it's really
Nice.
this week, so.
Everybody,
I mean,
quit
you
your
get
job.
better
Embrace
early.
unprofessionalism.
So this is where my, like you said,
Yeah.
but just kind of,
It costs a lot.
Yes.
It does. It costs over $1,000 a month to do 10,000 people. But I know it's expensive. It's expensive to text that many people that much, right? Like I text 10,000 people every day, at
Unless
least
you have
once.
200 car twos.
Yeah.
Is that because a lot of it's international, or just because
No,
it costs
just
that
because
much
it costs
to do
that
it?
much to send
Wow,
text.
all right.
And this is actually the cheapest service I could find. A lot of them were by subscriber per text, and I was like, whoa!
Right.
But these guys are only by number of total subscribers with an unlimited number every day. Although if I do too many, it would be bottlenecked at the carriers. Some people don't get them every day because their carrier says there's too much stuff coming from this number, and they have to like shut it down. But anyways, I try to make sure that it's not anything important. So the thing is, about once a month, I send a single text message about a thing, a product, or that the book is coming for pre-orders, or whatever else. The response to that single message is always worth more than $1,000. The thing is, anybody who signed up for text is like the truest of true believers. Do you know what I mean? Like, and so if I text you that, hey, this mug is discounted right now,
Yeah.
you know, or this is the new thing in the store, people just go and buy it. It's so good. And so anyways, yeah, so it pays for itself.
Okay. How did the
I saw a hand over here. Yeah.
I was wondering if you have a favorite type of bird.
I was so waiting for this question. It is the snowy owl, has always been my favorite bird. I fell in love with the snowy owl at the Toronto Zoo as a child. They used to have bird demonstrations where they had this big field that had these risers, and you'd go sit on the risers, and then out would come the bird handlers, and they'd bring like 6 or 7 birds, but the show was never the same because the birds don't cooperate. So they would be like, I'm gonna throw this rat in the air, and the falcon is gonna go over there. Well, he'll be back eventually because he knows we have his food. And then the falcon would come back, and the keeper would be like, oh, you caught your own rat. Good work. You still could make it in the wild. I actually met, I went on a trip to BC, and I met a Sakers falcon that was a professional bird, that its job was to not eat anything at all, simply fly around the grape farm to discourage other nuisance birds from eating all the grapes.
Like a scarecrow, except a living
Except
one.
a living Sakers falcon. And so they fed it well, and they just so it always came home, and it flew around, and it retired because one day an eagle tried to eat it.
Oh.
And the rule of nature is when the bigger bird comes along,
Yep.
you're fucked. And so the Sakers falcon actually wouldn't go out of its cage anymore.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah, and so they were like, first of all, we have an eagle, so we're not worried.
Yeah.
Now we have an eagle.
Uh-huh.
And then they gave him to this place that's rehabilitates birds, but he was 17 and a Sakers falcon lives to be 8.
Oh,
So he was old.
good run.
Yeah, right? It was awesome. It was a cool bird. Yes.
Are you gonna go to the Raptor Center while you're here then?
Yeah.
Is there one?
There
Oh,
is. on
yeah,
the
very
campus,
famous
the
one.
Minnesota campus. And you can actually do a Zoom call with a raptor. We had one for work.
So
We did an
two.
eagle and
Vulture.
no, the
No.
vulture didn't win. The owl won.
The owl. We did the owl.
I tried so hard to get an author photo with birds. And there was actually, before COVID shut my last book tour down, I was booked to do a Renaissance fair in North Carolina where the booth next to me was the falcon handler.
Nice.
And I was like, oh my God, can we team up? And
Like
they were
the
like,
glove and
yes.
the little hood and
Yes,
the whole bit.
they were gonna just bring the falcons to my table, and I was gonna sign books flanked by falcons. I was like, genius, this is the best thing ever, and that didn't happen.
Well, a little planning. Next time when you come back, the Raptor Center is genius. And they have really good people there, and I don't doubt that there would be a tremendous number of photo opportunities.
I believe it.
Anybody else? Question?
Yes.
What's your least favorite bird?
Didn't think on that one.
Yeah, I've never answered.
Yeah, I'll step in and say seagulls.
Seagulls. You know what? I actually really respect seagulls.
You ever been shit on one
because
by one?
They're garbage birds.
They are.
I kind of.
Pigeons and seagulls can both go to hell.
I love. You ever see the video of the pigeon that rides the subway?
No.
It's a very Toronto story. The pigeon, the doors open, the pigeon walks on, doors close, it goes to the next stop, doors open, pigeon wanders off. He's like literally on the subway all the time. That subway pigeon.
Most pigeons aren't children's book pigeons.
No,
though,
they're
let's
not.
be honest.
Don't let the pigeon drive the bus.
Rats
That's
with
the
wings,
worst.
exactly.
I don't like the little chirpy birds very much. Yeah.
Isn't that most of them?
Yeah, that's a lot of birds. Can I
That's
just
a
say
lot
that
of
I
birds.
don't actually, I don't have a soft spot for birds. Birds aren't so much my thing. They're my brand. Weird. I know. It's so.
That is kind of weird,
It's
though,
like
right?
I said, I don't like Star Trek or something.
Yeah,
People be like, what?
So here's the thing. So this thing that's coming out at the end of the month, and there are a few copies here. Your thing of 100 actual postcards that have a place to write the address, a place to put the stamp.
Yep.
Earlier today, you sort of popped my balloon. There's a bird fact on the back of
Yeah, there's a
every
bird
one
fact
of
on
them.
the back of every one of them, but they're not real. Everyone's fake.
So I was reading through it. I'm like, oh, that's a. Oh, I see.
Well, it's like
Oh,
the original field guide is full of bullshit.
that's a
you know?
contrite
Like,
sparrow.
yeah.
Oh, that's a flustered grosbeak.
No.
And you're like, not one of those is accurate. I'm
Can I
like,
tell
son of
you
a bitch.
that those are real bird names,
I don't-
but
oh, I believe it.
always on the wrong bird. So the bird people are like, that's not a merganser.
Yeah.
What the fuck? And
Right.
I'm like, no, that's why it's funny. Because it made you upset. That was Bird Bro. He was so like, he's like, I could just make fartin' birds, and I put the word, I put the words I just farted beside pictures of birds. And I was like, dude, more power to you. Do it.
Except I already got there, bro.
Exactly.
I've staked out that territory.
So here's the thing, like, people are always like, you should have called it swear birds, or you should have called it foul language. I'm like, first of all, fuck puns. But also,
I agree.
Here's the thing, Effin Birds tells you what you're gonna get.
Exactly.
Unless you're a moron who buys it for his mother without reading it and then gives me a negative Amazon. His name was David. You should look it up.
Not
It's
that
a
you're keeping track.
really good review.
I don't know if you're keeping
No,
track.
I have a Instagram story highlight called Idiots. You should enjoy that. It's great.
Don't find yourself honest, right?
You don't
So,
want to.
I mean, other than the people who are like the diehard birders, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because I get
Because they
it.
hate it. And you know what? Here's
Well,
the
of
thing.
course they
There
hate
is a
it.
version of this book for diehard birders. It's called The Field Guide to Dumb Birds of North America by Matt Cratched. It's a great book that has jokes about real bird behavior.
Right.
Right? These are books about people that I hate. Right? They really are. They pretend to be a bird guide, but they're about people who made my life more difficult. The Matt Cratched book is about hating being a birder. And so it's for the person who understands birds, understands birds' behavior, and realizes how much that they hate the fact that they know those things, you know? Like, it's like a very self-critical book, and it's funny as hell. I think it's a great book.
So,
It's like the notebook of a person who hates going out to look at birds, looking at birds.
Which is brilliant. It's kind of like that true fact series of animals and things that are online. They're very much like that. Other than the real birders, though, they get offended because, like, this should be a real book about birds.
Yeah, this is...
But I mean,
How can
there's
you call
got to
it
be
a
people who are
field
just
guide?
there got to be people who are just pushed the wrong way because you're dropping the F-bomb so
Yeah, they don't
often.
think it's
Or
funny. Yeah. Or they think the joke runs out of steam. And I mean, here's the thing, humor is so subjective. Like, I feel bad if I say, I don't find Family Guy funny. But the thing is, I don't have to find it funny.
Yeah.
Lots of people find it funny. It's very successful, and they don't need me to like it for it to be successful, right? And so, if somebody else doesn't like what I like, it's okay. They don't have to. Lots of people don't like it. There's no universally beloved piece of humor that's good. Do you know what I mean? The most universally loved humor is like kind of the worst. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like if
Big Bang
everybody-
Theory says what?
I don't love Big Bang Theory, but I didn't watch very much of it because I was just sort of like, I don't think this is for me, and then I just didn't watch it. 'Cause
But
you
I know people
why-
who adore it, right?
Yeah, right,
But
exactly.
it's
And
not
like-
just humor. It's baking. It's music. It's whatever. Right?
So there are people who have spent so long trying to get me to watch Big Bang Theory, and I'm just like, I don't know, I don't have the time in my life to I don't think it's my thing. And maybe I would love it if I watched it, who knows. But there's also all these people who keep giving my brother copies of my books for his birthday and stuff like that because they don't recognize that I'm his brother, and he hates it. He doesn't like it at all because he's my brother. Why would he like anything that I did? You know, he's my younger brother.
Pretty
He's my
brilliant,
younger brother.
right.
And so they don't know. They're not doing it to be funny.
Right.
And he is so mad all the time because they're all like, "Oh, this is right up your alley, Chris." And he's like, "Fuck."
You and fuck here.
Exactly.
Does anybody else have a question? There you go.
Oh my God, so many. Yes. Wait, have you asked a question before?
Not yet.
Okay, give me you're first.
So 2 parts.
Oh, yeah.
Are you a fan of Ralph Steadman?
Yes. Oh yeah. But my Stedman Illustrated Animal Farm is one of my treasured possessions.
And the second question follow-up, are you planning on going to Hell's Kitchen while you are here?
Oh.
Where's what's?
Oh,
Yeah.
downtown is some of the best.
Okay.
You're right downtown where you're staying.
Yeah, yeah.
So actually, you're freakishly close to it, staying where you're staying. I'm not going
Okay.
to tell them where you are. So it's not
I'm right by the convention center.
But
It's a lot of
it's
floors. You'll
a
never find me.
walk-in down to the basement place. It's
Yep.
got some of the best food in the world.
Sweet.
But they've got gorgeous Stedmans all over the
Oh,
walls.
okay,
on the
okay,
side
cool.
there.
Thank you.
Recommend the one piece that I always walk by and I just fantasize buying it. Birds I shoot in my garden.
Stedman rules. Yeah, okay, that's cool. Thank you. I'll have to figure out. See, the con schedule is like, I guess we're gonna get the 24-hour diner. Okay, we're gonna eat at the 24-hour diner, and then when we're done, we'll go eat at the 24-hour diner because everything's closed. But you know, I will try. Oh, Sunday maybe. Sunday we're done at 4, so maybe.
Okay, maybe. I mean, like at Hell's Kitchen, their breakfast there is exquisite.
How early are they open?
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't usually push the limits on a Sunday morning.
This guy gets up at like 4 in the morning. So.
Yeah, no, on my weekdays I'm up at 4 a.m. So on weekends, we just kind of let it ride. We kind of let it
Well, I
ride.
understand. All right.
Your question?
Both of you, right?
Mine doesn't have anything to do with Effin Birds,
Okay.
so if yours does, go ahead.
It kind of does, but it's kind of not
Okay.
on Effin Birds.
All right.
But it could be if you wanted it to be, but there's probably a lot of license.
Okay, so there's a.
I'll be back in a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you ever, I'll just start with this. Have you ever thought about collaborating with any other artists?
I have. So it's really funny because people are constantly suggesting like, wouldn't a collaboration between this and this be great?
Yeah.
And the answer is almost always, it would be. Should it be twice as expensive, or should we each get paid half as much? You know, and so that's kind of the practical element of it. Is it's so hard to team up with somebody else and still make it worth everybody's time, right? Because especially with art is expensive to produce, and I never want to be the guy who takes advantage of somebody for their art.
Right.
You know, I got to pay them what it's worth, and once I've paid them what it's worth, is there any money left for me? You know, like Sandy Gerald's cover for Space Werewolf for 1 page was like $1,000. So because his art is great, right? And that's what a Sandy Gerald piece costs. Imagine me trying to get him to do a 90-page comic, right? I don't think I can afford it. You know, I'm gonna have to go with somebody who's not as well known, but hopefully is good. But I can't pay too little because it's not fair, you know? And so I'm really like, I think the getting paid part of all of this is really important. Like, I think that
I just want to say I think it's crucial because I think a lot of people, when we start to get into things that are esoteric, like art, right?
Yeah.
People are like, but there's something more going on here than money. You and I just went out to dinner before this.
Yeah.
If they don't charge what they charge for the meal they made, they can't afford to stay in business.
Right.
They will close
That's
down.
it, right?
You being able to make a decent living for creating something hilarious and an actual piece of good art, I don't think there should ever be shame in an artist wanting to get paid what they're worth and what they produce.
Bat Labels stopped posting. Swear Track hasn't made any new jokes in 8 or 9 months. Those don't have an income. Effin Birds has a new joke every single day because it pays for itself, you know? And so great art, if you want to keep doing it, you got to find a way that it pays for itself. And so like, that's why it was part of, you know, building this the first. It feels so mercenary to think about like that list where I was like, this is what will succeed and this is what won't succeed. Let's make the thing that will succeed. It's like, I feel like, you know, like here's the secrets to writing the perfect screenplay, you know? And yet those things, they do work. and if you want to sell it.
Well,
It's kinda
yes
like-
and no. Not everybody. I mean, people know that formula, right? People
Yes.
know what works. People know what's out there. It by no means is a guarantee that you're going to be successful. You're going to do it well. And I don't think it's mercenary to figure out, because most art doesn't ever make any money.
It's
and
true.
people don't ever get to do it.
Yeah, and they don't
so
get
you're
to
like,
the
all right,
profit.
am I
Yeah.
going to sit in my cube all day and do what I do and just always wish about this and do it on the side and it's never going to happen? Or if I sit down and, like you said earlier, I think you brought up an excellent point, treat it like a business.
Yeah.
If I'm not coming
It's
up with a joke, I have to sit down for 8 hours and I have to shut everybody out and I have to treat it like I'm at work
Yep.
today and get the shit done. Then you get to do this for a living.
Yeah.
Other people enjoy it. You get to make a living doing something that you actually enjoy. Because you quit your day job. This is your
This is my day job. This is my day job.
which is, I think, is fantastic. So I don't think there's any shame in an artist of any stripe making money at what they do, and I don't think it's mercenary because, I mean, how many people here have ever spent any money on Effin Birds? Okay, I mean, and so
Wait, who
that's-
didn't have their hand up? You give me my free sticker.
The reason I asked that question is because, like, I've noticed that some of the colored version, like, some of the colored birds are, especially for, like, Sacrilegious Sunday and whatnot,
Yeah.
fucking hilarious, right? And you have the perfect personality that mixes with a gal named Ashley Longshore Art, and I don't know if you've ever heard of her, but she literally makes at least $15,000 to $25,000 off of one single painting
Yeah.
that she does.
Right.
And so what I'm thinking is a very limited collaboration.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
limited. Finding that niche audience that you have, there's gotta be somebody.
It's gotta be
right?
somebody who wants to pay a lot of money
Pay
for
a lot
one
of
piece of
fucking
original
money to
art.
have it eat farts with glitter in their fucking living room.
You know
that's
what?
beaded.
I think if something like that's gonna happen, it's gonna happen as like a charity auction or something like that.
Yeah, and I think it would
Have
be
to
a
something like that.
hilarious
Yeah.
collab, and she is just, I mean, she's fucking,
I always like looking at art, so that's.
yeah.
Although you know what my favorite. Did Robert Bateman happen in the United States, or is he just a Canadian phenomenon?
Anyone?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Sounds like it's just a Canadian.
Robert Bateman. He's like this iconic, boring painter of nature. And boring is not the right word, but he painted
Mundane.
very realistic, but atmospheric. But like your grandma loves Robert Bateman.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, mine.
Rest in peace.
Yeah. Yeah. I have 2 Robert Bateman books at home because I do really love them. Yeah. Who else had a question? Yeah.
I always like to ask this to people that I admire, so I'll be honest about that.
Uh-oh.
And I know you like to read, and I know you love music. What are you reading? What are you listening
Holy
to?
moly. I am currently reading, and this is not a lie, Cassandra Peterson's autobiography, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark.
Oh, yeah.
Cruelly Yours, Elvira. Highly recommended. It is, if you have a vague conception of who Elvira is, and you think about what her autobiography would be like, yes, it's like that. And if that sounds great, you should read it. I love it. I also, I was starting to read it, and I was like, I really want to hear her reading this to me, and it turns out she did read her own audiobook, and so I was like, well, I bought that twice. That's fine. So that's what I am reading. We actually went to a record store today, but I bought mostly old stuff.
Well, that's what you do at a record store. I mean, there is new stuff there, but especially at the record store we went to.
There was this hilarious conversation I had with the guy who owned the record store, who's like this deep knowledge of records.
He's like a weird, middle-aged, overweight Gandalf.
Yeah.
Not
That's
middle-aged is
that's
not right.
actually like-
Elderly,
yeah.
elderly,
Yeah.
overweight
Yeah.
Gandalf
And anyways,
of records.
I was like, is there any pressing of Who's Next by The Who that doesn't sound like shit? And he's like, yeah, find one that says Decca on the label. And so I'm like opening all their copies. I was like, oh, here's the Decca. He's like, yeah, buy that one. I was like, oh, this is the cheapest one. Sweet.
There you go. It's great to work with professionals, right? And
Right,
when you
you
ask the
know.
question, and I do. I work for that guy, so yeah, exactly.
But I'm trying to think of what else I'm listening to right now. I really enjoyed an album called Cactus by Elise Davis. It is it's an album about being a person who has trouble letting people in. Like the cactus metaphor is pretty on the nose, but it's really good, and it permeates the album. And especially the first side of it is just like very emotional, and also production sound is something else. And when I found out she recorded it all in her like house by herself, I was like, fuck! Like it's such a. There's her album before it was called The Token, and it is the album cover that looks like the sound of the album more than anything else I've ever seen. it's her in a smoky, looks like a bar lit by the red neon of a neon sign. And it's like, wow, you know, it's a great album cover. And then the whole album sounds like it's somebody in an empty bar on the stage with that reverb of the room that has nobody in it. It's like, oh, loved it. I love that record. What did I play? Because I was on Brian's show and you have to choose 3 songs. What did I choose? I chose.
Oh Christ! I do 2 shows a week. So he
Yeah.
was on my podcast called
Yeah.
The Brian Oak Show.
It was a good interview. I enjoyed it.
And it was great.
I picked Crowded House
You did?
in the Lowlands off of Temple of Low Men. That's my favorite band of all time.
Yeah.
I can talk about music for a long time. Sorry. And I picked.
God, I would have to bring up the email. Where
Yeah,
you
we have to
sent
go
it
look at your own podcast.
Okay, well, let me just do a little research right here.
Anyways.
Dude, I already did it. Listening to my own podcast, like looking at your own pictures, like
Can't
sitting around.
do it.
Ick.
Oh,
Not interested.
I produced
It's
over
not that good.
100
I'm going to be honest. It's not that
I
good.
produced over 100 episodes of shows where I was the host, and it's fucking torture every time. I don't want to hear myself talk.
Oh, Christ. And everyone's always like, oh my God, you've got that radio voice.
Yeah.
I'm like, ish. The last thing I ever want to do is hear myself talk.
That's right. Who else has got questions before we wrap things
We can
up
do
here?
one more.
Last question.
Turns out we're gonna do no more. Oh, okay, got it. What's the?
Did you right out of the gate have the format of one picture, one phrase, or did you think about maybe doing multi-frame? or
No, it was always one because part of the original conception was merchandising, right? And the reason that I can't sell Swear Trek merchandise, aside from the part that Paramount and CBS would sue me,
Which is a fairly significant part.
I sat down for a meeting once where a nice person from CBS said, "You don't seem worried that I'm about to give you a cease and desist letter." Anyways, that was a great meeting. Swear Trek still exists though, so you know. But like, you can't put a video on a shirt, you know. And so that was part of it. So it's a one-panel cartoon because I love the Far Side, and I think one of the things that I really loved about the Far Side was that I could wear a Far Side cartoon on a shirt and people could get it. Midvale School for the Gifted.
Yes,
I wore to the school for the gifted that I went to. I love that you all know what that cartoon is. But like, that's the greatest. And it could be on a mug, and it could be on a shirt, it could be in the page-a-day calendar, you know, like, it was like, yeah, that is ideal for this. And so that's what I did.
So we have to wrap up questions now, yes? So
Sweet.
before we do that, though,